crores. Out of that 70, 52 had already been spent and 18 was the balance. That 18 was included in the second tranche of 2,11,000 crores. So it became 211 plus the initial 52, which was the leftover balance. Now out of this 2,11,000, 1,35,000 were the bonds, and the balance was either by market raising or by sale of non-core assets. Now at the beginning of this year, of this entire amount which had been sanctioned, a total amount of 65,000 crores was still remaining. And as of today, of that 65,000 crores, 42,000 is still remaining. And therefore, with this additional 41,000 for which we have sought a parliamentary sanction, we still, for the balance 3.5 months, will now have 42,000 plus 41,000, which is 83,000 for the balance year. And that will make this year's recap to a total of 1,06,000 crores. Now this 1,06,000 in all for this year and 83,000 which is remaining is going to be utilized under 4 different heads. The first, of course, is to ensure that the banks meet their regulatory capital norms. The second will be that the better performing PCA banks are given capital to achieve a 9% capital to risk weighted asset ratio, the CRAR, and the required capital conservation buffer and the 6% net NPA requirements, so that some of them are able to come out of the PCA itself. The third category will be the non-PCA banks, which are very close to the PCA red line, will be provided some capital to ensure that they don't get into the PCA. And of course, where the amalgamation is taking place this year, some regulatory and growth capital will have to be provided to those banks. Now this 83,000 crore will be distributed in this manner. Once the distribution process is decided by the DFS, in these 4 heads, it will be made known to each one of you. Meanwhile, the recognition of the NPAs, a process which started in 2015, has made a considerable headway. It's almost complete. And at a time where it had peaked in March 2015, the non-recognition was to the extent of about 7%. That now is about 0.59. So a high provisioning has already been made by the banks as a result of disciplining which has taken place in the last few years. And obviously they led to the peaking of the NPAs, because what was under the carpet has been brought in the best norms of transparency shown on the books. And hopefully the last quarter has already shown that there is an improved performance, and therefore now the downward slide in the NPA itself would now commence. This entire exercise will also lead to the improvement in the lending capacity of the banks itself. I'll now leave it to the Secretary to make his comments.
This present enhanced capital, as Honorable FM has mentioned, is in the 4 categories that we maintain the minimum regulatory capital of all the banks, all the PSBs, and to achieve 9% capital which is already higher by 1% as per the Basel. Basel provides for 8%. The present regulatory regime is 9%. So the government is taking this additional thing to provide even that higher 9%, and also 1.875% capital conservation buffer, which makes it total 10.875% to the PCA banks which have shown better performance. Not to all, but only to those which are better performing. And also to bring their NNPAs to a 6% margin. This also will, as FM has mentioned, ensure that all the non-PCA banks which are in stress and which are close towards in breach of some of the parameters of the PCA threshold are also provided capital that they do not breach it. So this is all encouraged by the various improvements which the banks have shown. As Honorable FM has mentioned, that the NPA's recognition is complete, recapitalization is in full swing, it has been enhanced further, recovery is also in full swing. The last, this H1 recovery is to the tune of 60,726 crores, which is also 60,726 crores. I'll distribute it to you. And this H1. And this trend is likely to continue. And we are awaiting the very basic credit data relationship which has changed because of the IBC and debarment of the connected parties. We see a future resolutions in the coming months. And the bank's credit risk weighted assets to gross advances has also decreased from 80% to 71%, which shows, I'll circulate this to you, which also shows the quality of the assets which is now increasing. The risk-taking capacity is also improving. And this has also been recognized by the World Bank while the ease of doing business report, that getting credit, we have had an improvement from 44 position to 22 positions between the year 2016 to 2018. So the PSBs are showing tremendous improvements in terms of recognition, in terms of provisioning, in terms of recovery, in terms of reforms. And therefore, this is the time that we empower them and equip them with the capital so that the fastest growing economy is fully, banks are ready to support that growth. Thank you.
So can you see them, some banks coming out of DC now?
And more importantly, sir, which will be these banks and what will be the criteria of how fund infusion is going to happen?
Adding to that question, so you also mentioned some banks are close to the PCA deadline, so any names that you would like to give or any indication that you
3 banks are in within the threshold 1. They have not reached the threshold 1 in the non-PCA, so they will be provided capital so as to strengthen their base. And about the PCA banks, the performances we are looking at is the lower level and declining trend of net NPAs. Whichever PCA bank has shown better performance in terms of the reduction in the NPAs and the improvements in return on assets. So these would be the 2 major criteria. Names will work out. Names are.
नाम नहीं बता सके, पर ये बता सके चालू कारोबारी साल में इस पैसे के इस्तेमाल के बाद कितने बैंक PCA से बाहर आ जाएंगे? 4, 5, 6, कुछ ऐसा आपको
ये असेसमेंट के बेसिस पे 4 से 5 बैंक्स को कैपिटल देने का प्रोविज़न हमने किया है, जिसमें डिपेंडिंग ऑन देयर परफॉर्मेंस एंड डिपेंडिंग ऑन द रिजल्ट्स ऑफ द Q2 एंड ऑल्सो द Q3 द फिगर्स विल बी डिसाइडेड. But there are chances that we equip at least 3, 4, 5 banks to facilitate them that they meet 10.875% capital, which is the highest prescribed capital today as on March 31st of 2019. And also bring their NNPAs to 6%, which is the capital, which is the regulatory norm as on the date.
So 4 to 5 banks under PCA will be given.
So these
that
are the
would be
banks
worked
under
out.
PCA.
These are the banks under PCA.
And which also have a high chance of probably
getting out. And they will be facilitated by this because the 3 factors are there in the PCA regime, which was changed in 2017. While all the reforms were happening, the PCA regime was also made far more stringent, and the return on asset and other things which are not internationally applicable were also added. But nonetheless, the government is committed to provide whatever is prescribed within the as a regulatory norm.
Will that be additional support, or you will still like go ahead and have your own plan?
The regulatory regime, as per the prescribed regulatory regime, the capital base is to be maintained. The government's additional supplementary and additional budgetary provision will equip these banks to whatever is the maximum regulatory prescribed norm and the 6% NNPA. Thereby, it will facilitate the BFS also to take a decision as per their norms. But that's within the BFS's mandate.
When will you start getting the money?
That will decide based on the results and on the parameters.
And would some banks be left out of this infusion that's
There are
happening?
some banks which don't need capital this financial year. Are there banks which will not need at all?
There are some which will not need, which are in a very sound base, which already maintain the minimum prescribed regulatory capital. Actually, some of them maintain even higher than that.
Can you give the names and how many of them are there?
3 or 4 banks are such. State Bank does not need it. Bank of Baroda at the moment doesn't need it. Indian Bank is also maintaining very well. Vijaya Bank is also maintaining very well. And as FM mentioned, that the amalgamating entity after this merger would also be further equipped, because it will become the second or third largest bank. So it will also need the additional funding, because it will become systemically important bank. That will also be factored in.
Sir, what about Punjab National Bank, sir?
That's in the breach of the threshold. So they are one candidate. They are also a candidate for.
अब ये होमवर्क आप लोग खुद भी कर लो उनके अकाउंट्स देख के. जो बीच वाले हैं, which are either likely to go down or which can come up, that's the category being helped. जो बहुत strong हैं या जहाँ invest करने से भी लाभ नहीं अभी होने वाला.
So, but simultaneously PNB is doing a stake sale in housing. So do you think they will be getting money, so you may not need to?
As mentioned by the FM, the market raising and sale of non-core assets is also part of the entire capitalization plan. And not only PNB, many others are also doing it. The market raising is also, they have all the permissions in hand, and therefore at the opportune time, at the opportune time they will also go to the market.
So PNB will get capital infusions, and it's in level 1 of the PCA.
It's in the formula we have given it, the broad principles. Whosoever fits into this.
जिन बैंकों का मर्जर होना है, उसमें बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा और विजया बैंक का आपने कहा, देना बैंक को भी मिल सकता है क्या?
तीनों बैंक्स में देना बैंक तो पहले से PCA बैंक है, उसको रेगुलेटरी कैपिटल की रिक्वायरमेंट है. But the amalgamated entities combined balance sheet would be looked at to ensure that all three not only meet regulatory but also get some growth, because it's going to be the second, third largest bank of the country.
सर एक जवाब में FM सर ने कहा था कि जो पैसा दिया जाए उसका इस्तेमाल लैंडिंग बढ़ने में भी किया जाएगा, लैंडिंग बढ़ेगा इससे. तो जो हम लोग नकदी की समस्या की बात कर रहे थे, खासतौर से MSME की ज़्यादा लेन देने के लिए, क्या आपको लगता है कि एक फोकस एरिया होगा वहाँ पे समस्या दूर हो सकेगी इससे?
MSME lending already 14 to 15% की रेंज में है. एंड इफ़ यू लुक एट दी सेग्रीगेशन, जिसमें 25 करोड़ तक के लोन्स और 25 करोड़ से ऊपर के MSMEs के, उसमें लैंडिंग की ग्रोथ है. पिछले बोर्ड मीटिंग में भी डिस्कशन हुआ था, जो आपने वेबसाइट पे देख सकते हैं RBI की, कि MSME सरकार का एक बहुत ही ऐसा फोकस एरिया है जहाँ पर लैंडिंग की सख्त आवश्यकता है. उसके लिए इससे जो कैपेसिटी बढ़ेगी, उससे MSME की लैंडिंग भी निश्चित रूप से बढ़ेगी. और जो बोर्ड में डिसाइड हुआ था, when this scheme is announced for restructuring of those MSME loans till 2019, that will further facilitate this lending to the MSME.
Sir, original like 2.11 lakh crore plan. So banks were supposed to raise 58,000 crore. So how much money has been raised so far? And so by the end of financial year, how much is still expected to be raised?
Banks have already mobilized close to 24,400 crores. Out of that, and as I mentioned, all the necessary approvals have been given to them to go to the market at the opportune time. That the timing is what they decide depending on various factors.
Action from Dalal Street, where markets saw a sharp recovery after a gap-down opening due to global headwinds. So mid-caps and small-caps led the outperformance. Nifty recovered about 80 points off lows to reclaim the 10,950 mark, while Sensex recovered more than 240 points to end flat with a slight negative bias. Amongst the broader markets, banks mirrored the benchmark indices to end flat. Nifty mid-cap was the only major index to end above the flat line. Let's bring in Sonia Shenoy with a wrap of today's trading action. Sonia, bulls negated global pressure quite well today.
Well, thanks for that. Today was a good day for the bulls after the kind of gains that we have seen under our belt, more than 600 points since the lows of December. Today, what we managed to do was hold on to those gains. So the Nifty recovered about 70 points from the day's lows to close flat. The mid-caps ended in the green, and all this amidst a lot of global market slowdown and volatility. So India has outperformed, which was a good thing. In terms of gainers, you had the oil marketing companies that gained the most. That's because Brent crude fell substantially in late trade. It fell to below $55 a barrel. HPCL, BPCL, IOC, in fact, all the crude beneficiaries. Asian Paints was one of your biggest gainers. HPCL was up about 3.5%. Yes Bank was the big Nifty gainer today, so up 4% on that. And you had other banks like Kotak Mahindra Bank for company as well. A couple of these auto stocks like M&M, Tata Motors, Bajaj Auto also did well. And playing the capex cycle recovery, L&T was one stock that went up about 1%. So what failed then in trade today? You had SBI that was down about 2%, Bharti Airtel under a bit of pressure ahead of its board meeting, and Wipro were stocks that were down about 2%. Maruti Suzuki as well, the company has scaled down its expectations of growth from double-digit to 8% by the end of the year. So Maruti Suzuki was down about 2% or so. But by the end of it, all we did is consolidate our gains of the last many days, the Nifty ending flat but recovering 70 points from the day's lows.
Okay, Sonia, thanks for joining in with that. Now, veteran investor Mark Mobius has picked India as the top investment destination at current valuation. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, Mobius says that India has a good chance of standing out next year with growth slowing in China. Speaking about 2019 elections, Mobius said that India growth story may see some hiccups if Narendra Modi is not elected as Prime Minister in 2019.
India would stand out and decouple from the developed market slowdown in 2019, or could India be also dragged down by the global growth slowdown that we might see?
No, I believe that India could decouple and move forward in view of the incredible growth rate of the economy, one of the highest in the world. Of course, among the major countries, now India stands out. With China slowing down, India has a good chance to stand out.
Crude prices have now crashed to $56 for Brent, and the Indian Reserve Bank also is pumping in a lot of liquidity. Do you think we have run too fast? Would you buy even at current levels?
Oh, yes, we definitely would. India looks very, very cheap, and of course, as you said, with the Brent down, this is very bullish for India.
So what's your top market to invest into in the year 2019?
India, actually, India's right at the top, which is why I'm here now. Definitely, there'd be a real problem if you see the reforms that Modi has introduced disposed of. That would be a real backward step. Now, I believe that the Congress Party would not do that. They probably continue, but populist measures are not a good medicine for the economy.
Well, Mark Mobius has always been a bull on the Indian market, but meanwhile, crude prices have slumped as oversupply concerns surface. So both Brent and NYMEX are trading with cuts of more than 3% at the back of the oversupply concerns that we are seeing. So Brent down by about 3%, NYMEX in fact down higher by about 4%. From crude to Mint Street, where rupee has breached the $70 mark in intraday trade, led by slump in crude prices and weakening in US dollar. The rupee has strengthened by more than 0.5% and is currently hovering around the $70 mark. The US Federal Reserve, meanwhile, hiked interest rates by 25 basis points, defying calls from US President Donald Trump to hold fire. This is the fourth rate hike in 2018. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell hinted that next year could see only a couple of rate hikes against 3 rate hikes projected earlier. Shares plunged on Wall Street, and the ripple effects were very clearly felt across Europe and Asia today. So in Europe, the FTSE in London hit its lowest level in over 2 years. CNBC's Steve Leisman reports on the Fed rate hike and its aftermath.
A negative reaction in markets to the decision by the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates and signal further rates ahead. It seemed like the market wanted the Fed to back off entirely from plans to raise rates next year. Instead, it got only a partial backing off at best. Here's Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell explaining the change from forecasting 3 rate hikes next year to now forecasting 2 quarter-point rate hikes.
Many FOMC participants had expected that economic conditions would likely call for about 3 more rate increases in 2019. We have brought that down a bit and now think it is more likely that the economy will grow in a way that will call for 2 interest rate increases over the course of next year. We always emphasize that our policy decisions are not on a preset course and will change if incoming data materially change the outlook.
Here's a look at what the market wanted and what it got. The market had wanted just 1 or no rate hikes forecast for next year. Instead, it got those 2 hikes down from the previously forecast 3. The market wanted some flexibility on the Fed's plans to reduce the balance sheet by $600 billion next year. Fed Chairman Jay Powell said, we're going to go ahead with reducing that balance sheet. Finally, it seemed to want more concern about the economy. Instead, the Fed put a line in the statement saying it's monitoring financial developments, but not necessarily acting on anything yet as far as the market is concerned. Now, there may have been a little bit more dovishness in the Federal Reserve Chairman's statement than maybe the market gave it credit for. And maybe one of the biggest disappointments for the market is that they wanted the phrase removed from the statement saying that further gradual increases were going to be needed. The Fed did not remove that, but it said some further gradual increases. So a market that wanted a completely dovish Federal Reserve for next year got one that is a bit more dovish, but still on path to raise rates if the economy performs as they expect.
Now, meanwhile, Gujarat has emerged as the best state for startups to flourish according to a ranking released by the DIPP, or the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. 27 states and 3 union territories participated in the exercise after DIPP laid down a policy framework for the rankings. Now, Anu Sharma is here with the exact details. Anu, so Gujarat on the top. Take us through the best and the worst performers.
So the government today has released the state startup ranking list for 2018 on the basis of 7 different pillars ranging from incubation support, existence of startup policy, simplified norms, etc. In this ranking, Gujarat has emerged as the best performer. It has performed well in all these 7 areas as per the government. Gujarat is followed by the startup hub of Karnataka, which has found its place in the category of top performers. And Karnataka has also been joined by states of Kerala, Rajasthan and Odisha. The last of the list is the category of beginners, which has 5 states and 2 union territories of Puducherry and Chandigarh. The government senses that there is a commitment from states when it comes to strengthening the startup ecosystem in the country, as it has seen that now there are around 22 states with a startup policy as compared to 4 states before Jan 2016 when the Startup India initiative was announced. Also, it is seeing that there are more states which are providing incentives to women entrepreneurs and are providing single window registration system for startups. So whether all of this results in an encouraging system for startups on the ground, that remains to be seen, and whether it builds a confident startup community, that remains to be seen, considering the recent issues raised by startups with respect to angel tax. Back to you.
All right, Anu, thanks for that. Now, early stage startups are feeling the pinch from IT department notices asking them to clear outstanding taxes. However, DIPP Secretary Ramesh Abhishek says that the government has not received any complaints from startups so far, and they have proactively taken up the issue with the Revenue Department. Anu, in fact, spoke to him earlier today. Here's a slice of that interview.
The government's intention is not to tax any investments, genuine investments, which are made in startups or anywhere. So they came out with a mechanism. We brought it out in April that if you apply to this interministerial board, the board can exempt you, and then you are not covered by the Section 56. So we would like people to apply more and more here, and we will definitely approve the applications.
So are you aware that notices are being sent to the startups?
We have read in the newspapers. I have not received any specific complaint or any particular information, but it has come to our notice yesterday in the media, and we have taken with the department in general as to what exactly is happening.
And any statement on the crisis of confidence that has gotten into the startup system after these issues on angel tax?
See, I don't know what is the crisis of confidence because a few notices here and there should not create a feeling of crisis. The government is committed to supporting startups.
Well, with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of After the Bell. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. CNBC TV 18 Markets Today Talkback is up next.